Welcome everybody to this video on how to deploy a Konnect gateway data plane to a Kubernetes cluster basically, but we are going to be using our local Kubernetes cluster. And let me bring up the diagram real quick so we can take a look at that. Okay, so this is what we have going on for this video. This big bubble down here, this is our workstation. So I drew a boundary around there just to let everybody understand that we are going to be operating inside our workstation using our browser and our terminal. We'll be connecting to these various components. We're not going to be talking to Docker specifically. We may interface with the Kubernetes cluster, KinD, and then we're going to have our Konnect Dataplane gateway deployed on top of our KinD cluster here. So we have our workstation, we have Docker running in the background, we have a KinD cluster running as a Docker container, and then we are deploying a Konnect Dataplane on top of that into Kubernetes. Now, after it gets deployed, it's going to reach out and register to Konnect hosted platform in the cloud, and it's going to establish connection, two different sockets. There could be, I think I saw a third one, but the sockets are for two different purposes. The first purpose is to send the telemetry data, so to send all of the statistics, all of the the HTTP requests, the API requests, the failed connections, successful ones, and different types of data. It's going to be sending that data back to the Konnect host platform so that we can view those statistics and all that kind of stuff. The other thing is the actual configuration. So the way this works is after you deploy the gateway data plane locally, you have a fully functioning, we have a fully functioning gateway on our workstation here locally. But the way we configure it is how it is the change here from like an enterprise or an open source fashion. So the way we configure it then is we use our browser here and we talk to the Konnect API up here. We either use the deck utility, or we use the API itself, or we use the interface. So there's three different ways to configure a traditional gateway data plane inside Konnect. One of them is deck, the utility there that they have. One of them is using straight up API calls direct, and another way is using the interface. And we'll demonstrate some of those things here today. So that's the basic layout of what we have going on here. We do have another app that we've put onto the local cluster here to demonstrate some connectivity, though I don't have it in the diagram, but we do have just another app that's a part of the previous videos on how to deploy a KinD cluster to our local workstation. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started here. Once you first get to the gateway manager here, you're going to have the default gateway here. You still cannot delete this. You can rename this default gateway manager if you want. It can be something like do not use, or it could be dev, or whatever it is you want to use, or you could just not even use it at all. The reason this is still here though, like I said, so for example, if I show you this, if I say, well, I just logged in, this is new, I don't want this here. So let's just get rid of this. It says you can't do it because this is the default runtime for your organization. Now, what's happening behind the scenes is the Gateway Manager was the first major, I guess, service that was in Konnect. Because of that, as you can imagine, once you're starting off something new like a major project, you're going to have a bunch of things that are coupled behind the scenes, and then once you start going, you start adding mesh and you start increasing the functionality of Konnect or your product, if you will. You're going to have other things that just are not they're not easy to add because of the coupling that has taken place over time. So then you have to go back and decouple and then move forward and stuff like that. So we don't know what Kong's going to do with this. They may decide to decouple everything behind the scenes and we don't need it anymore. And then everything's tied to the organization down here that we're logged into. But it's just that there are some things, some infrastructure components, and some resources tied to your Konnect subscription that rely on the existence of this default gateway manager. Okay, so that's just the way it is today. We're just going to do a new control plane today. You have three different types of control planes. You have a Kong ingress controller control plane. We'll do that in a separate video. You have a control plane group. We'll cover that in another video. And then you have just the traditional Kong gateway control plane group. And we're going to use that for right now. So we're just going to call this demo. And then I'm going to give this a description. I'll say this is a demo. And then there's two different types of data plane nodes here. We're going to be using the self-managed hybrid instances. This dedicated cloud instances are still in tech preview. What these are instead of hosting your own through Konnect, because Konnect traditionally with the gateway, it's a split hosted thing where you have the control plane, like I said, up in Konnect Cloud, and then you have your actual self-managed hybrid instances hosted in whatever environment that you put them in. Could be custom data center, your own data center. It could be your own workstation like we're doing here. It could be out in the cloud somewhere on AWS's EKS or Google's GKS or whatever. The requirement is that the data plane itself needs port 443 to reach back to the Konnect URLs to give it telemetry data like we were talking about, and also get its config that gets pushed down. Okay, so these dedicated cloud instances, what these are fully hosted instances inside public cloud providers, and the Kong team is targeting AWS first, I believe, and then I think they're going to be expanding into Azure and Google for that. So we'll go over the dedicated cloud instances once they become fully available. We'll do something like that. So for right now, self-managed there. There's nothing else here that we need to configure actually. So we'll just go next. Now it's taking us into deploying our first data plane nodes. So right now, the gateway control plane called demo has been created. Now it just dumps us right into a data plane here. So it's asking us, so okay, you have a gateway control plane and Konnect. Now where are you going to be deploying your data plane? By the way, what version do you want to use? We'll just use the latest version here. And the platform, there's a lot of platforms here to choose from. Let me scroll up a little bit. Am I already scrolled up? Huh. It's not showing me everything right there. Maybe if I click done. Ah, interface. Let's go back in. Okay, new data plane node. Let's see if this is a little better for us. And it is not. So I can't scroll up here, but you have macOS ARM. So you can install it directly on your workstation if you want to. The process is going to run controlled directly by your operating system. You can install it directly on Linux using Docker, host on Docker Windows. Advanced setup here. So this is directly on Linux using a Linux service. So this is Linux. This is installing on Docker on Linux. This is directly on Linux as like a Linux service. And then this is using Kubernetes. So we're just going to use Kubernetes here. These tech previews, you can go ahead and check these out. Uh, if you are working in any one of these and you want to see what Kong would have for you, you can click any one of these, and then you can go, after it deploys, you supply your credentials, then you can go check out and see what happens. So with like AWS, for example, what this is going to do is it's going to ask you for an AWS credentials. It's going to deploy a CloudFormation template to your AWS space, and then then you can deploy it. You can see what Kong's doing there, and then you can check it out and see if you want to reuse anything or come up with your own or whatever. So we'll do Kubernetes. So here we have some commands we have to run. So first off, we're going to set up the cluster using these commands. So here, let me do a clear. Let me bring over the command window. Okay. And our namespace Kong has now been created. Um, for those of you that haven't followed along in other videos yet, uh, our local KinD cluster, we're just using, well, that's Docker. That's not what I wanted to click on. I'll click on this guy, Lens. Okay. So Lens in our cluster, let's take a look at our pods, and we'll do all namespaces. So these are all the pods we have. It's a very simple local cluster for anybody who's a Kubernetes savvy. We have some Prometheus and Grafana loaded here using the Prometheus Helm chart. We have some basic stuff here with KinD. This is our sample application, HTTP bin. That's just set up in the direct default namespace. and that is listening on node port 30,004 right there. Uh, and that's basically it. We just have the Calico networking. There aren't any, we don't have any custom, other than a local path provisioner for storage. We don't have any other storage providers. It's a very simple cluster. So this is what we're going to use to deploy Kubernetes. We just created, deploy the Konnect Dataplane to our Kubernetes. Uh, so we just, let's see, where's namespaces? We just created the Kong namespace, and we're going to keep following along in the instructions here. So if you don't already have the Kong Helm chart, go ahead and create that, or go ahead and add that locally, and then you just run a Helm repo update here. So we'll just do Helm repo update. We'll take all the repos you have, pull down the latest. Then we got to click generate certificate here, okay? Unless you're going to bring your own. But in what we're demonstrating today, we're just clicking generate certificates. So I'm just going to skip ahead here, and these are referencing, once we create the secret, excuse me. Once we create the secret, the files that it's already referencing here is in our examples, tls.crt and tls.key. So we're just going to go ahead and use those. All right, so we're going to go in, we're going to grab our editor here, and we're going to come up with a tls.key and a tls.crt. Okay. Now we're on the, let's see, let's do the cert first. I think that one's the first one. Now these are the credentials that the Konnect data plane is going to use to establish the MTLS connection. So we're saving our cert and our key locally here. You can save them anywhere. And then, well, you want to save them in a secure location. But for what we're doing, this is all just demos and stuff like that. So there's nothing sensitive that we're doing here. But you'll want to put these in production, stuff like that. You want to put these in an actual like key store or something like that for even, systems that everybody's using in your organization, basically. So you can recover and you have everything there. Okay, so we have our key, we have our cert. All right. So now let's keep moving down. So the next thing to do is we first have to stage these to Kubernetes. So we need to stage these as a secret type of resource here, as it says secret here, into our Kubernetes cluster, because this Helm chart is going to reference those secrets. Okay, so once we stage the credentials, then we're going to deploy it, and then it's going to pull down those credentials and then register with Konnect. So I'm just going to grab this, copy this, and then we're already in the Konnect directory. So we should see our tls.crt and our tls.key here. So we're just going to paste these in here real quick, and then we're going to put in the paths for these things. Okay, that should work. Okay, it's created our secrets. So now the key and the cert are loaded in the Kubernetes cluster in the right namespace, okay, where we're going to be deploying our Konnect gateway data plane here. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is, this is the default. This is the default set of values for your Helm chart that Konnect is going to give you. All right, but we're not going to use this. We're going to append to it. We're going to take everything here because there's unique things in here, such as the endpoints we're connecting to and stuff like that. I think the endpoints are the only thing unique in this. Yeah. So what's unique here are the endpoints here that this guy's going to be connecting to. So we're just going to save that. I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to paste this in a temporary file here, and we'll just go on from here. I'm not going to save this file. I'm just using it as a temporary because I have a separate inside this repo here. One thing I forgot to mention. So we do have a Konnect repository that you'll want to go here. I don't know why these style sheets aren't loading. If I go to this and it looks ugly like this, if I click refresh, then it comes up. So there's something going on there. Um, so we have a repo here. Go ahead and clone this text survival school at Konnect because that's what we're going to be using. So in there, in this repo, this is the actual repo. It's local. Uh, in there, I have a DP Helm values right here. And then so under these fill-ins, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab these guys and move them over. So I need the cluster control plane. Where's the cluster control plane? This guy right here. Copy, paste, cluster server name. And if you haven't noticed it yet, I'll show you why we're doing this in a second here. Cluster telemetry endpoint. Let's go find that here. And cluster telemetry server name. There. Okay. That should be everything. All right. I'll leave this up for now. We're going to save this. So the main difference between those two files are right here. So this is proxy is the top section of this YAML file where you go in to configure how the data plane is going to be bringing things up. There's other data plane, Konnect data plane options inside the Helm chart. And if you want further detail, what you're going to want to do, you can go ahead and just search for column Helm chart. And the first link here that'll come up will be the GitHub one. So that's if you want to get to, I mean, sometimes they got some good stuff in here. Get some decent documentation and whatnot. But that's more for the raw code. If you want an easier way of looking through the Helm chart and searching for certain things, you can go to the artifact hub link there. Close that. And then so as you scroll down, this is a very long page. So it has documentation for specific areas and stuff like that. But what I want to draw your attention to here is some of the values that you may want to look at. And the values that we're adding here is we're adding in for the HTTP and the TLS connections here. We're wanting to specify node ports because we're on a local workstation. And you may even want to do this inside production. It just depends on what your environment looks like. You may want to use, and this is getting Kubernetes specific, but you may want to use a load balancer type of service for your Kong proxy for your data plane. Uh, each and that's if you're in the public cloud and some cases private cloud too. I don't know if I'm sure Tanzu, VMware Tanzu supports has an automatic automatic stuff going on with load balancing. I'm sure they have that now as well. So the load balancing port, for those that don't know Kubernetes, load balancer type port here, if we set it to that, would talk to the Kubernetes cluster and whatever the Kubernetes cluster is configured with and whatever we tag things with. It's going to be talking to that backend API, that provider, and then set up ingress through a load balancing and stuff like that and everything like that. So, but for right now, we're just doing node ports here, and we're not doing cluster IPs because we have to connect to them, okay, from the outside. So for here, this is going to be our unencrypted Kong Connect or Kong gateway proxy, and this will be our TLS Kong Connect proxy. So if you recall, inside the KinD cluster, we told Docker that we wanted ports 30,000 to 30,006 open, and then we also want 30,443. Okay, so this is the only section that we added from what Kong gave us here, and it was just appended literally right at the bottom. Okay, so we have our values now. Now let's go ahead and install it. So we Helm install. Let's go to our command line. Okay, so then we're going to do a Helm install. And the first thing here is what you want to call the deployment, the release. So I'm just going to call it Konnect. Actually, let's just call it Konnect DP for data plane. Then the Helm chart, a specific Helm chart you want to use is Kong/Kong here. The namespace and the values, and then where are you putting those values? Where's the values file that you want to reference? And I need the correct path, so I don't have to go back and look. It's just Helm and then DP values. Okay, so Helm, whoops, Helm, and then DP values right there. Okay, so we go ahead and run the install, and then we get that information back from Helm. We can take a look at the pods, and we should see here's the Konnect Dataplane coming online. Let's look at some of the logs here. Can we get any of the logs yet? Probably not. It's still coming online. There's the logs coming now. Now when we look at Konnect, I can just click done at this point because there's nothing else there that we need. Okay, compatibility status unknown. When it's first going through its synchronization, that's going to be unknown. And then it should be good to go here shortly. There we go. It's compatible now. So now we have our Konnect Dataplane deployed onto Kubernetes. We looked at the Helm chart. We can test connectivity here. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to use our HTTP command, and then we'll go to localhost, and it should be listed on 30,000. So that should have went through just fine. Let's just double check that real quick. So we'll go to services. We have no port 30,000 right there. Okay. And when we run this, you should get something like this. No route is matched with these values right here. So because there's nothing, we haven't put anything on the gateway yet. Okay. But we do have a local application. So let's go through setting up manually to test our local application. So we have a local application listening at first. Let's walk you through getting the information here. Let me get back to my cluster. Too many windows. So we have a service right here. Where are we at here? So this is our application locally, and it's listening on 30,004 for the node port. So we basically have one of two options then, because we have two different endpoints. We have the node port endpoint for this application by itself, but more than likely what's going to be happening is your applications, if you're in Kubernetes, you'll be deploying your apps to Kubernetes and bringing them up on cluster IP type services, which means they're only accessible from within the cluster. But when you have your Konnect data plane inside the same cluster, you can just use the internal name to reference. So that's what we're going to be using. The internal name will be hdbin.default.cluster.svc.local. I think that's the name. Let me just double check. 1 second. Okay, yeah, so that's what it is. We'll be connecting to hdbin.default.svc.cluster.local. I think I got the cluster and the SVC mixed up previously. Okay, so let's go back to the UI. So we're in Dataplane nodes. We're going to go over to Gateway Services. We're going to create a service. And we're just going to call it HTTP bin. And the URL is going to be, actually, we're going to expand this out protocol. So you can put in the full URL there, but we're just going to break this up here. We're going to say httpbin.default because it's internal to the Kubernetes cluster. Is the host. The path that we're going to hit on it is going to be / anything. I'm going to check to see, nope, there's nothing that we need to call out here. So I'm just going to click save. All right. So that creates a service. Okay, and a service is the system that Kong is going to send connectivity or connections to. Now we need to establish a route. So we need something on the outside of the gateway. We need a path on the outside of the gateway to proxy to. So we're going to click a route, add a route. Let me just add it directly here. So we can add it from here. I think this is the way I did it last time. Yeah, you can just click tab here. You can add a route this way to be specific to the service. Okay, so We're going to call this HTTP bin route. That'll work. And a path. So this is the path on the outside of the gateway. So we're going to hit this on the outside of the gateway. So when we make our API call from our terminal, we're going to hit the gateway on / HTTP bin. And then the gateway is going to turn around and proxy that to / anything on the application. See, we have the strip path here. If we turned off strip path, then it would strip this path. It would allow us to hit the gateway on this, but then it would strip it on it, and then it would just hit the gate. It would hit the backend application on it would hit it on the exact path that you're hitting it on. Is what would happen. So the strip path removes the path that the gateway you've configured on the gateway route, and then it'll use the path on the service instead that you have configured. Is the way it works. Okay, so we have that. So let's test connectivity. This should be working just fine now. So let's see if we get something back from the application itself. So we're gonna hit it on localhost here, and we're gonna get the same error once we hit the root. But when we add in that new path, we should get some other information back. So this is us hitting the actual application, HTTP bin. And then we get back, this application just spits back anything you send it, the anything endpoint just spits back anything you give it, it'll echoes it right back to you. So it's more of a diagnostic situation. Okay, now what we can do, and we already got our telemetry here that got sent up. We had our 200 request. Okay, now just to demonstrate some other things here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a global plugin on this. We're going to uh, on everything inside this gateway, we're creating a global plugin, and there isn't a particular instance name at all. And I don't think we actually have to click anything else. We just click save. So what we've done is we've turned on basic authentication to the entire system. So now when we try to go to here and we try to connect to it, we get an unauthorized back because now basic authentication is turned on for everything. They can be scoped to specific routes and services. We may go over some of those things later on, but this is a basic demo here. So we have that. So now let's add a consumer. So we've turned on authentication, and we're just gonna add a consumer. We'll call this consumer Jane, and we'll save Jane. Then what we'll do, we need to give Jane a credential. So we click on credentials, we go over to basic auth. That's the kind of credential we're just going to use for this demo. We're just going to say password, and the username is Jane. So that's the authentication. So now that we have a consumer and we have a password for the consumer, the plugin only cares that we're coming in on some kind of credentials. It's not, we don't have anything specific to like Jane can only access this or that or whatever and can't access these other things. That's not what we're doing here. So just to add for the HTTP command, to add the credentials here, we just do Jane and then password. And then so there, then we get the information back right there. We should see by now the unauthorized call should have come up. Yeah, we got the error right there. So we did 3 calls, 3 requests. One of them was before. Let's see if we can look at the other things here. Analytics. Okay, so yeah, that's our error rate. This is the total number of requests for this whole day and stuff like that. But yeah. Okay, let's see what else is on our agenda here. Okay, so the last thing I'm gonna show you in this demo is just a little bit on deck. So there was another video if you haven't seen it yet on how to install the deck utility, command line utility. So we're just gonna go up here to the deck location inside of our repo, and we're just gonna take a look at some of these things here. So the way you can authenticate to deck, to Konnect using deck, uh, is right here. So this is using the local HTTP IE secure command, and this is just using a direct API call using the bearer, what's called the bearer token, and this is where your token would go here. So it's at whatever's in your Konnect personal access token file. That value would go right here, and then this thing would work. Okay. Uh, deck ping right here. You can use deck ping. So what we're going to do here is we'll say deck ping, and we're going to do, if you look in the other commands here, there's a Konnect token file that you can use instead of putting your whole string inside the actual command itself. So if you're doing any sort of demos to other people inside your organization or anybody else, for example, you're going to want to use the deck token file, because then your token itself isn't going to be recorded on the screen at all. So then what we're going to do here is we're going to say, I'm going to grab the syntax here because I'm on Windows and I know Bash and Mac a lot better than Windows. So I'm just going to grab this right here. So this is all Bash. I do have another one right here, another file right here for anybody using, I'm sorry, this is PowerShell. I do have another file right here if anybody using Bash. Okay. We're going to go ahead and grab that. I'm going to bring this down here. So deck ping, deck successfully connected. So now this is where it's letting us know that it's not just assuming that you want to talk to a gateway anymore using deck. They're starting to decouple things and make space and stuff like that for other things. So now we need to use a deck gateway ping. I'm going to save that. I'm going to commit those changes later on. Okay, so then that tests your connectivity. Is all it does. It says like, are we good? Yes, you're good. Okay. Then to do backup of the config, so everything that we created, we're just going to go ahead and grab this whole command here, and then we're just going to paste this into here. And so it should spit out to the screen here everything that we get. So we just asked Konnect to give us a deck YAML syntax dump of all the configuration we had. So we had the credentials here for Jane, basic user and password here. Then we have the plugins. The plugins we're using, this is a global plugin that we have. We have the basic auth and all that. And then we have the services here. Okay. And that concludes the end of this demo. But before I close, we're going to clean up. So first we want to clean up. So I'm going to run. We're going to destroy our local cluster because everything on our cluster, everything we deployed locally, I should say, is inside the Kubernetes cluster. So we can just run our scripts here and our teardown. That'll delete everything locally. You can see our cluster is gone. No cluster. And we should go back to Konnect, and we're going to delete our Dataplane node, and we're going to delete the control group. The reason we're doing this is we want to keep things as clean as possible, because we don't want to get charged for things that we're just basically just not going to use and we're just playing with. So, all right, we are now back to square one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next demo.